Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special interview. My name is Maurice, and I'm here with Patrick Boone. He is a captain on a Boeing 787, and he will tell you today something about how coronavirus has impacted his career and how he deals with it. Patrick, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon.
We are very pleased to have you here at our conference, and we are very grateful that you want to talk about your life in the aviation industry, especially in these hard times. Could you maybe tell something about how it all started or how it is impacted your life?
Well, I'm actually running two jobs for more than 30 years. I'm an airline pilot flying on the 737 and the 787. And aside of that, I'm also writing books and developing software. On my job as a pilot, this COVID crisis, as I can call it, did not have too many big changes, except that, of course, the number of flights have been reduced substantially. But I was fortunately able to keep my job. And I know that many people, pilots and cabin crew, are losing their jobs. And I really feel sorry about that. I've been through the same myself a number of times. For the software business is a really challenging time because we develop software for the aviation industry. And so we have a huge drop up to even 50% in our revenues. So for the company, Crew Lounge, it is a real challenging year this year. But I stay confident that we will survive and we'll be able to take it. Actually, my personal vision on this coronavirus crisis is that I see this more like an opportunity, both for your private life and for your work. In your private life, you have an opportunity to rediscover the small and important values. Things like living together with your family. Usually we don't have time for that because we're always running. And also the importance of social contacts with your friends and family and with your neighbors. It's also an opportunity to improve your work processes and to reinvent yourself and create new branches. I think that this crisis actually, I try to look at it from a positive side. You know, if you look at the word crisis in Chinese, it is two characters. It's YT. Y stands for danger, and the T is really lovely. It stands for machines, aircraft, actually, and it also stands for new chances and opportunities. And this is how I look at this crisis.
And how do you think that this crisis can impact your personal or your professional life in a way that it can be improved? Or because many people, like you said, are losing their job, especially in the aviation industry. So how can people see this crisis as a positive thing?
Well, as I mentioned, Einstein said every crisis is a new opportunity. So I think that people should reinvent themselves and use this crisis as a new opportunity. Also for airlines. Airlines, they didn't have the time to prepare for this crisis. It just happened overnight. Everybody was overwhelmed by the impact and the size of this crisis. I sometimes compare this crisis with the tsunami in 2004, where we knew there was an earthquake and we expected some waves, but nobody actually expected waves up to 30 meters and killing 200,000 people in more than 10 countries. So that happened overnight. Also on a personal level, I was a little bit overwhelmed by this. I didn't expect it to be this big and to take so long. I had hoped it would be less, but I was not scared because it was not my first time. It was actually the fifth time or even the sixth time that I'm actually losing my job. This time, fortunately, I'm not losing my job, and I'm really grateful for that. But in the past, I've lost my job a few times with companies going bankrupt or contracts that are not extended. This is the first time that this crisis or this setback is worldwide. In the past few months, I've been flying to the west and to the east, and if I go to the States or I go to China or Korea, I see everywhere aircraft that are wrapped up in plastic. And it's really sad to see that. It hurts me. But it also, I have this feeling, are we perhaps overreacting? We had the same thing, I think it was in 2012, with the Iceland volcanic eruption, where we have shut down European airspace for a certain time. And I believe, it's just my personal opinion, that we have overreacted on that. And the same feeling is coming to me with this crisis. Are we overreacting?
And overreacting in which way? That we cancel too much flights, or that we take the measurements too heavily? Or how do you see that we are overreacting?
Well, I don't have the right to judge about life and death. That is not, that is something that I cannot do. But if I see the impact that these rules or the shutdown of passenger air travel has on the economy, and also on a personal level, the psychological impact when you lose your job and the financial stress that comes with it, people living in loneliness, all those things together, is it worth that? But it's a question I cannot answer for you.
And how is your approach to a crisis? How does it differ? Is this approach to the coronavirus different than the approach to the volcano in Iceland, or is it the same? Or
well, there is a big difference because all these crises that I've seen in the past, they were always limited in region or limited in time. For instance, with 9/11, passengers were afraid to fly, but after 2 or 3 months, the aviation industry showed its resilience. If you look at the volcanic eruptions, then it's really local, it's regional. It was only in Europe, it was not in Asia or in the States. So this is the first crisis where you see airplanes grounded all over the world. So it's a big difference, yeah.
And do you think that your viewpoint has altered because of these crises on the aviation sector?
Well, as I said, it's a crisis and I see an opportunity. The airlines, they didn't have time to prepare themselves for this crisis. But now that we are in a crisis, they have the opportunity to reinvent themselves. And this is what they should be doing. Not only for aviation, but for any industry that is hit by this crisis. For instance, if you look at Tomorrowland, they used to organize a physical festival, and they reinvented themselves by going virtual. And it's a success. And actually, you are doing the same with your conference. The conference is normally a physical meeting in Amsterdam. This year, you decided to go virtual, and that is good. Now, the key point is to not use this as a temporary solution, but to continue doing that in the future. I'm sure that if you look at Tomorrowland, as from now on, we will have 2 Tomorrowlands. There will be the physical one and the virtual one. And there's no reason to stop doing that. So that is good. And for the aviation industry, I think they should do the same. They should use this crisis to improve processes and to reorganize the company and enforce the digital or digitize the processes. And they should also perhaps target different markets. A lot of small companies, they specialize in a certain segment of the market, like passenger travel or cargo flying or private business flying. And when you specialize in something, you become an expert, but it also makes you fragile. We actually have the same problem with our software business. We specialize in a certain domain. We focus on aviation, and it also makes us fragile because if you have a disruption of the market, then you lose all your revenues. And this is how I see that airlines today, they're actually reinventing themselves. In the airline company where I'm flying as a pilot, they started to, normally they focus on leisure flights and on tickets only. And now they started to do some cargo flying, which is a good thing. And I believe that we should continue to do that after the crisis.
You've said that airlines, especially now in this crisis, should adapt to still make a revenue, like taking cargo instead of only passengers. So that is for the short term surviving in the crisis. But how do you think that the aviation will look like in the future? Do you think that these changes, like you have said, airlines and other companies should always try to improve their business and always try to change? But how do you think that will look like, especially for the aviation industry?
Well, as I mentioned, if you focus on a certain segment, you make yourself very fragile. I think that more airlines will have a diversity of operations, ticket only, cargo, and charter flying. And I think that more airlines will move to that model. If we look at, for instance, EasyJet, they used to focus on ticket only. Now they will start offering also holidays. So a number of airlines will change themselves and work on different segments of the market, and that will make them stronger in the future. So the changes that they're forced to implement now to survive will probably stay within the airline and within their model of operation.
Yes. And how do you think that, for example, alliances, airline alliances will attribute to that? Do you think that cooperation between airlines and cargo airlines can help in the future? Or do you think that what we do now, that only the single airlines will improve their business?
I think that the majority of airlines today are not working alone anymore. Only the really small ones, but most airlines, they work together in some kind of program. So instead of competing to each other, we are becoming partners in business, and that will make them stronger on a bigger scale. For instance, if you look to Star Alliance, they have a network all over the world. So this is already happening for the last 20 years. It's not something new that we do now with the coronavirus. With coronavirus, we are just changing the type of operations within an airline. You can set up an alliance with another airline. For instance, if you do passenger flights, you can work together with an airline that is doing cargo only. We actually see that happening right now because we have this huge demand of cargo flying. For instance, that perhaps you don't know, but around 40 or 50% of all cargo that we transport today is not on a cargo airplane, but on a passenger airplane in the lower belly. And all these flights have been canceled. There is no passenger travel anymore. So we have a logistic problem right now for a cargo flight. In 2020, we have canceled around 2 million of passenger flights. So on many of these flights, there was cargo, and this is causing problems. And this is how we see alliances between cargo airlines and passenger airlines to work together and to distribute the cargo flights.
So you've said that collaboration between air cargo airlines and passenger airlines can help you during the crisis now. But how do you think that other options in the aviation industry can help us out of the crisis?
What I explained to you is how airlines are dealing with crisis and how they try to survive. And eventually it will also make them stronger, and they shall keep some kind of this change in the future. It will only make them stronger in the future. But this is not how we will get out of this crisis. To get out of this crisis that we have today, it's not the airlines, but it's with the politicians. They have to come up with a set of rules and make everything clear. For instance, if you look at a small country like Belgium, where I'm living, we're just like 2 hours drive wide, and we have 7 different governments, and every administration is making up its own rules, different rules. For instance, I can have a night curfew that starts at midnight, and my neighbor that is living on the other side of the street, he can have a night curfew that starts at 10 p.m. So this is really absurd, ridiculous. It's an absurd situation, and I see the same on a bigger scale. If you look to Europe, for instance, every country is doing its own rules, and every country is using a different scale to color the COVID countries. So I was expecting a little bit more from Europe, especially. I would expect Europe to come up with a set of rules that are valid for the entire airspace, or even on a bigger scale if you look to IATA. So don't misunderstand me. I'm a big fan of Europe. I wish we were just one country and everybody would use a single driver license and the same tax system. But it looks like Europe has failed a little bit on this. The solution to getting out of this crisis is not with the airlines, but it is with the politicians, and they have to come up with a single set of rules. For instance, they're talking about this COVID vaccine passport. They're throwing up that as a suggestion. I think that will be very difficult because, first of all, you have to set up the system from a IT perspective. That will take a few months. You have to protect your data. We have concerns regarding privacy. How are you going to manage that? And it's actually also a kind of discrimination because I myself, as a human being, I'm at the bottom of the list to get the vaccine. And I'm okay with that elderly people get the vaccine first. But then you will tell me, okay, you didn't have a vaccine, so you will be the last one to board this airplane. Or are we going to refuse people to board an airplane? I don't think that is possible. I think that would be some kind of discrimination, especially because you don't have this passport for other diseases, like, for instance, Ebola or whatever. We don't have such a passport. So why would you invent this for COVID? I see there are differences between these two diseases, but still. I think the solution to get out of this crisis is testing. So you take a test, a COVID test, 48 hours or 72 hours before flight, or even 50 minutes before boarding the airplane. But then again, we need an administration that sets the rules and that doesn't change the rules every 3 days or every 3 weeks, because for airlines, it is impossible to operate flights if there are no strict rules that are equal for the entire world, or at least for Europe, and rules that change every 3 days. It's impossible for airlines to operate flights.
Is that a little bit in extent to creating a single European sky, that every regulation is the same for each country that you will fly over or fly into?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of Europe. I wish we had just one driver license or one fiscal system, whatever. That would things so much easier. But if you see, they started with Europe 40 years ago. We see the UK leaving us for their reasons, and we don't have even one currency in this country. In this region, we still have different currencies. So yeah, I think that the solution it would be a huge improvement for aviation if there was just one Europe. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, and that is one big challenge for the aviation industry to cope with. That there are a lot of different regulations. Do you think that there are more challenges for the aviation industry?
Well, this crisis is not the challenge for the future. We had the 9/11 attacks. That was also a crisis around terroristic attacks. The coronavirus is not the challenge for aviation, I believe. It will change the companies a little bit and it will make them stronger. But the challenges for the future for aviation, there are more around climate change and the emission of carbon dioxide, the congestion of the airspace. And yes, here we would need a common airspace regulation. But this pandemic is not a problem for the future. This pandemic is different because if you compare that with, for instance, Ebola, we don't have Ebola under control. It's still popping up every 2 years or so, but the difference between Ebola and the coronavirus is the way that it's transmitted to other people. With Ebola, you would need physical contact by blood or other body fluids. And with corona, I could even infect you at distance. So that's change or a difference. But the challenges are more around the climate change. For instance, do we still need to do a 20-minute flight from Stuttgart to Frankfurt or so? Is that still needed today? Or should we replace that? Also for the cargo business, if you look at cargo by air, we only do 1% of the worldwide trade shipment through air. All the rest is by train and boats, ships, and only 1% is done through cargo airplanes. But if you look to the emissions, the airplanes, they're emitting 30% of the carbon dioxide. So this is totally out of balance. And then the challenge for the future will be, do we still accept that? Or should we change that? If we don't have any solutions to reduce the emission from airplanes, then this might be a challenge for the future for the cargo flying.
Do you think a collaboration between train modalities and plane modalities could be a viable solution?
Yeah, but that already exists. For instance, if I want to fly to a certain destination in China and we don't have a flight over Brussels, then I could take the train to Amsterdam and then take the airplane to China. This is something that already exists today. I see that KLM is having flights from Brussels to Amsterdam. Perhaps they should replace that by a train. You have the same thing in Paris. So this already happens today, and I think in the future this will even be more. I think that every flight under 30 minutes will disappear in 1 decade from now.
And do you think the COVID-19 crisis had an effect on the passengers for the long term, or will people still keep flying in the same way before the crisis?
Yeah, I think there will be no change. People are really resilient. Every human being, and actually any animal, is really resilient. That means if you lose an arm, you will continue your life without it, and you will still find happiness. The same for economy. Economy is very, very resilient. So I don't expect any changes to that. People will always want to discover new places in the world, meet family. The only thing that I see changing is the business meetings. So business travel will, I believe, it will reduce a little bit, because now with this crisis, we have discovered meetings like this one on Zoom or Teams or other programs. And if you look at the tables, the step or the increase that we took in the last 8 months is bigger than what we did in the past 10 years. So that will have an impact on business flying.
And you talked about the challenges for the environment and the impacts, negative impacts on the environment. That is something we as newcomers in the aviation industry, of young professionals, have to deal with. What is your vision, what these young professionals should do or must do in order to create a good future for the aviation industry?
If your question is, should I become a pilot or should I stay away from that? Absolutely not. There will always be airplanes, and like Churchill said, if you're going through hell, then just keep on going. Don't be afraid of it. There's no reason to give up your dream to become a pilot. Sometimes parents, they ask me if their kids should first go to university and obtain a diploma. I believe that is not really needed. It can be helpful during your career as a pilot if you like to take up a new or a side function in the office. Then such kind of diploma would be very helpful. But using it or obtaining a diploma just for the sake of having a backup when you are a pilot and you encounter the next crisis, that's not really needed, I believe. If I look to the crises that I've seen in the past, every pilot that is flying for more than 10 years will never take up his diploma anymore. He will always, or she will always, continue as a pilot. So to the question, should I have a diploma before I become a pilot? That is certainly not needed. It's not a good backup. The only thing that I can advise you, if you choose for this job, and this is not only for aviation, but actually for any job, you have to keep in mind that there will be disruptions in your career. You have to accept that. There is not just one smooth career where you start flying and it will go until the end. There will be shutdowns, and it can be anything. That can be your company that goes bankrupt. That can be, again, a natural disaster like an earthquake or a volcanic eruption, which is even bigger than the one that we had in Iceland. There can be other pandemics, or it can even be climate change. If you look to, for instance, animals, you have this tiger mosquito that is now finding its way to Europe. Could that have an impact on aviation? Perhaps it can. I believe that you just have to take that in account. I lost my job 5 times in the past, and you just have to take that into account. I would say you can expect the same in the future. It's just part of the business. It's not only aviation. It can happen in any business. If you prefer to become a farmer, you can have dry seasons or wet seasons. So you just have to deal with that. But never give up your dream to become a pilot. This looks like hell today. It is. But I believe that if you want to become a pilot, you really have to do it.
Well, thank you very much for your contribution today. I think a lot of people have been inspired to still choose a job in the aviation industry, and especially if they want to do a job in the cockpit or at flight crew. I think we have created a new view that we can take with us for the future. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a pleasant day and still enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Boris. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Bye.